Hello, welcome to the Vulgate Season 2, Episode 1. I am James from GroundedExtracts. Today, I'm going to tell you a story, and it's a true story. I grew up, my extended family and immediate family, long histories of addiction. I'm not sure how far back it goes. Talk a little bit about breaking generational curses and trying to stick the landing as best as possible. I was born in 1990. My father, in 1994, he was a landscaper, got elbow surgery. One of the people he landscaped for was a pharmacist, a very well-off doctor, wrote my father prescriptions for almost 20 years until he died. And I helped him landscape and do these things for this person and other people. I didn't know why until I was older, but my dad was one of the most irritable, miserable people in the world, I thought. You know, I still kind of think that. I haven't met anyone that has beat him yet. He kind of turned inward into himself. So my mother left us in 2004. At that time, Vicodin was marketed as the non-addictive painkiller. That's what all the pharmaceutical reps, everyone, this is public knowledge now. And it always has been. If you look at their promotional videos from the early 90s and things like that, no addiction, can stop whenever you need. So I don't know if my dad bought into that. My dad wasn't stupid. I think anyone that starts taking these things, after a short period of time, you realize what situation you're in. But if you have severe pain or anything, you know, these waters get very muddy. How are you supposed to provide for your family, you know, when you can't work and you run a business? Because my other family members had issues with addiction. My uncle at that time was much younger than my father, 10 years younger, and much more addicted to heavier opiates. And my father, although he was taking Vicodin, was very concerned when he got into heroin. He really wanted to help. And I'll never forget him telling me at a diner, I was sitting to the left of him, and he was telling me about this process. If he could get $10,000, and if he could get my uncle to agree to it, he wanted to fly him down to Mexico and have his blood flushed out, is the way he described it. And that never happened for my uncle. And my dad was just in his room on Vicodin, you know, watching the news. I really missed my family. I missed everything about it, right? I'm definitely not a victim. Life is what it is, and it's very, you know, twists and turns for everyone. But we do have to take responsibility for the things we do. I take responsibility for diving headfirst into a world of drugs. And I was so against drugs. My friends would always try to get me to smoke pot and everything. So my mother wasn't there. It's like, you know, who cares, right? I was like, oh my gosh, I didn't know why anyone did drugs. It was never explained to me. And in that moment I understood. I was like, oh, it can make you feel better or different. Great. It was as simple as that for me. As I walked in on my brother shooting heroin one night, and I'm not sure exactly how he found himself in that position, but I didn't really have a relationship with my brother and either get him in trouble or I could join the situation, right? So that's what I did. And my brother shot me up for the first time. And over the next few years, I got really big into heroin and escapism. And I was a musician at this time, and all of my art kind of died, and I got writer's block, and I couldn't create. I didn't know what to do. It's a moral compromise. You start compromising yourself. So that's what I did. And when you get your habit up to, you know, $100 a day, and you're a teenager, and that's not sustainable, and you've sold everything that you have, and you really don't want to hurt other people. You really just don't want to start breaking in houses and robbing, you know. You try to do what you're supposed to do. So I started going to youth group and church and seeing a doctor, and I tried working with my dad. Long story short, you get put on Suboxone. Now, heroin is a short-acting opiate. Suboxone is a long-acting opioid. I was in a facility with one of the main people that created Suboxone. This guy that was involved in the creation of Suboxone got heavily addicted to what he called methadone, like the methadone biscuits. So it was just fascinating. My dad got to meet this guy, part of creating it. His name was John, and he was like a very smart, crazy smart dude. Very interesting to see someone like that addicted to the very things that these people are working on, long-acting opioids. The whole idea behind long-acting opioids is that it has a much higher affinity to your dopamine receptors, and it floods you with a massive dose of your fix for the day, but it lasts all day. So it's basically extended release opiates. Not an opiate, it's an opioid. It's a synthetic, and it's an agonist slash antagonist. So it's a contradiction, like going in a room and turning the light switch on and off really, really fast. That's what's going on in people's brains all day long. Say the light off is a bad feeling, the light on is a good feeling, and you can kind of imagine you just are going back and forth in this state of uncomfortability. But every time that light switch hits though, it's mimicking the opioid feeling. So you're just going in and out of that all day long, a million miles an hour. Either way, the point, they say, why they market it that way and why they make it that way is because what an addict is, they say, pharmaceuticals and everything, is someone who uses multiple times a day. Their whole sales pitch is, if you just take it once a day, then, you know, you're changing your behaviors. The ritualistic way of cooking up your dope or getting your pill bottle, whatever, is now down to just once a day with a little tab. So it's trying to break you out of the habit. I don't believe that that is the primary source at all. I don't believe that smoking 3 cigarettes a day compared to 1. But if that 1 cigarette is massive, 1,000 times stronger than the other couple cigarettes you were gonna have, is it really that much better? So the long-acting opioid, yes, it helps people so they're not dope sick anymore and they can go to work and not worry about, I have to go out, because in a couple hours I'm gonna be sick. They're right. 24 hours you've got minimum to feel not dope sick. But you don't feel well and you don't feel healed. And like I said, that light switch, you're constantly in and out of this state. And eventually that turns pretty quickly into a state of numbness. Sometimes it takes a few years, but it lowers your testosterone, destroys your serotonin, and many guys will find themselves getting testosterone shots and getting on gabapentin and getting on all these other things. Adderall, they'll get on things now because they lose their motivation eventually. I was told my testosterone was so low when I was on Suboxone, they couldn't believe that I got out of bed in the morning. And they were like, are you suicidal? Like, because you should be. I always wanted to wean down from it, right? So they started me at 24 milligrams. And why you want to wean down is because it lasts so long, it also takes that much longer to get off of it. So if heroin is a short-acting opiate and only lasts for a few hours, real high tolerance, I started with white china, I moved down south in my 20s and I started doing black tar heroin, doing 3.1 grams a day. And that could be $300 if you don't have a good connection, but either way, if you're at that level of use, which many people are, you're gonna get sick every 4 hours, like on the dot. So that's why Suboxone is very tempting for a lot of people. Like, I understand the particular way to market it, right? But to get off that black tar heroin or white china, whatever type of short-acting heroin, not fentanyl, by the way. I'm not talking fentanyl or trank or any of that. I'm talking heroin, regular heroin. If you're on that much, regardless, it's gonna suck coming off, but it's still only gonna take 1 week to a month to feel normal again, right? Depends on how long you used and all that, but generally around 2 weeks is the average, depending on who you are, how long you used, and how healthy your body is and how resilient you are. Different for everyone, but these are just general numbers. Now, the Suboxone, the buprenorphine or Subutex or Zubsolv, that is a 36 to 48 hour half-life. The heroin half-life is like 12 hours. The half-life is when it's still in your body, but you're not feeling the psychoactive effects of it. If you're taking Suboxone every single day and it's got a 36 to 48 hour half-life and it just keeps stacking up and you're taking it every 24-hour day, that eventually puts you in a spot to where if you stop taking that cold turkey, you have an average of 1 year of physical and mental withdrawal symptoms. So what does that entail? Hot sweat, cold sweat, throwing up, never feeling comfortable, extreme depression, no motivation. You're in a living hell. And some people after 1 year still don't feel normal. It's a very sad situation that they have set up, but they say it helps you work. So people are like, okay, then it helps me work. And tons of things help people work. I knew someone who drank every morning, and that really helped him work, helped him get through the day, you know? So I always weaned down because I knew what was ahead of me. They put me on Suboxone, I would go on it and off of it, and then I would stop taking it to do dope again because you feel more normal doing dope than you do Suboxone. Suboxone, though, is also, it's so strong that it's a blocker for heroin. Most people think it's the naloxone alone. It has naloxone in it, Narcan, right? In the drug itself. So when you're taking it, that's what you're taking as well. But they say that only absorbs through the stomach. So that's why some people don't swallow it after they let it absorb onto their tongue. Okay. So you've got two things in there. Opioid repellents with the whole pie, which is an opioid. So you're going in and out 1,000,000 miles an hour all day as you take this stuff. I didn't want to be on it, but I wanted to do good in life. I think we're here to help each other out and learn how to do so. So I wanted to help myself out. You can't help people if you don't help yourself first. I didn't even know I could help anyone with anything. So I started to wean down from 24 milligrams. It took me 2 years, and I got down to 0.5 milligrams every other day. And I was extremely uncomfortable. I was taking fungi and psychedelics and things like that to deal with the extreme withdrawal. A job to keep, lost my family many years before my family I was born into. So from teenage years, I was looking out for myself and figuring out how to live, how to sleep with a roof over my head. To come off Suboxone or methadone or any of these things where it's an average of a year of physical and mental withdrawals, and you have a job that you need because you're paycheck to paycheck, can't just take a year off of work. So that's why it took me 2 years to wean down. I've seen other people do it in months. My plan was wean down to almost nothing and then just stop, and hopefully the withdrawals wouldn't be so bad. So it's still a year after that last point for a lot of people. Some people will say, nope, it only was 6 months for me, but you know, I haven't heard many of those people. Very hard to wean off. My heart goes out to anyone in that situation where you want to get off this drug, but you can't. So you need help. And weaning down is so hard. Doctors start writing you prescriptions for other drugs that help the withdrawal process, right? So they know how bad it is as they're prescribing it to you. My doctor was very disappointed that I wanted to wean down. I got switched over. My first doctor was very happy for me, and I started weaning with him. About a year into the wean, I got a new doctor, and it was actually the doctor ahead of him. He was not happy about me weaning down. Never told me why, just didn't want me to wean down. So he started giving me other drugs, and I happily accepted them. The way you feel in that state. Impulsive things come first. That's why it's a miracle that I and anyone else can wean down even when you're on this. It really jacks up your entire mental faculty. I felt absolutely terrible. I felt horrible for months at the lowest dose. When I tried to completely stop, it was just absolutely hell, and I wasn't able to work. So I had remembered what my dad told me about Tabernanthe Iboga, and that's what he was telling me about in the diner. The Tabernanthe Iboga, primarily known as Ibogaine, that is what is made out of Iboga. Iboga comes from the word baghaga, that means to care for. That is a tree in Africa surrounded by the Bwiti tribes, B-W-I-T-I. Now, Bwiti are a tribal people, as you would think of, in the jungle, doing what they do. Now, they have iboga growing all around them, and other trees that have similar alkaloids to the iboga. But the Tabernanthe Iboga is the chief among them. That is the most concentrated, biggest, most plentiful source of these alkaloids. These alkaloids are said to completely scrub your receptors clean. Completely. Some would say it winds the clock back to before you ever did drugs. So it's very interesting that this tree exists in this jungle where there isn't a massive drug trade going on around it. So people from the West will go there and pay thousands of dollars for a night session and have their receptors scrubbed and cleaned, right? Is that even a safe thing to do? Like to go into the jungle? So the Bwiti, their people have a 0% murder rate. 0. They don't have one recorded murder in their history. So it's a very fascinating people. A lot of them do initiation ceremonies into adulthood. And they do this anywhere from 7 years old to 15 years old, but the average is 12. They cook the tree like a soup in a bowl and they pass it around, and everyone in the village drinks their portion of it. They have very specific portions for initiations for man and womanhood. How they react to it, how the tree interacts with them, tells the village and the other villagers who this person is and whether they're ready for the new responsibilities of life, which would be man or womanhood. So that's what they use this for, right? And so what we're talking about now is taking something like that and combating addiction. How does it even do that? You could get into the specifics of trying to figure out the mechanism of action and things like that. It does have absolutely unfathomable cleaning abilities for your receptors, for your brain. That is a fact. I believe that there's a spiritual component going on, and the physical and the spiritual are completely tied. So when you have a physical cleaning, there's also a spiritual cleaning that's going on at the same time. Same thing with fasting. But I'm talking about drugs that take years to come off of, to feel normal again from. So the part they use is the bark of the root. This tree and this bark, Dr. Sebi called it the most powerful medicine known to man. I agree with that. So I was on these very intense drugs, and my father had been telling me about Iboga since I was a child. Then a Law and Order episode came out that talked about it, and my dad was like, look, see? And it blew my mind. That was 2009. So I was already well within my own heroin addiction at that point. I was fascinated. The concept of it. At this point, I'd already gone to, 30-day rehabs and trying to get your body to feel normal and not be so overwhelmed by desires and your thoughts, and not be overrun by your carnal desires to feel a certain way or taste a certain thing or escape in a certain particular way. So it can help do those things if the person is willing to do the work, because it's a teacher plant. It teaches you about yourself in amazing speed, but it's then your job to put it all into practice after the experience and not go back to your old ways. And you get shown things about yourself that give you a leg up on the game, okay? Like a cheat code. However, long-acting opioids and things like that, and certain drugs that came after that, even some of them are even short-acting, Iboga does not work well with. Someone took 16 milligrams of Suboxone every day for years, and then they heard me talk about it, and then they just decided to just take it one day without weaning down. They didn't get any of the results they were looking for, other than like a similar focus on what they wanted to achieve, but very brief. Didn't put it into practice. Feel very dope sick afterwards. It's because you didn't wean down. A common response is, then if I have to wean down, what's even the point of doing Iboga? Well, Iboga's alive. It's a teacher plant. It commands respect. So you have to do it properly. Now, these long-acting opioids are created to be sticky. They're created for duration, for longevity. So they're much harder for Iboga to scrub, much harder. And fentanyl's short-acting, but still, Iboga has a very hard time with that. And I'm starting to think that we are going into a new time of approved. Iboga is only meant for certain things. It was always known as the drug cure-all for all, until recently. I've had Iboga clinics reach out to me asking me what we do with the fentanyl people. Right, because the fentanyl people, even though it's short-acting, are very different in terms of effectiveness of the Iboga compared to other short-acting opiates even compared to a very low dose of Suboxone. So I got myself weaned down so far, and I just had a realization one day, and I swear the Creator put it in me. It's available to you. You've been told about Iboga your whole life. Go get it. So I didn't know where to start. I didn't know how. I just started reading books on Iboga and doing everything I possibly could. The Root of All Healing is a great Iboga book. I was reading some ones from like 20 years ago. I was printing them off at work, like 200 pages, big stack of white copy paper. Wanted to know about people's personal experiences more. So I just found myself going down deep into a rabbit hole on drug forums several years ago. I don't even know if those forums still exist. I made contact with someone, part of the tribes. I don't believe they were a Bwiti member, but they were very, very well respected and connected by the Bwiti tribes. I knew I was following a hunch from my Creator to seek this out. So I just kind of earnestly asked if they'd be able to help me, and wrote me this very long thing back about the process, and then got it to me. My dream was coming true. Something I've been told about for decades. And I would tell family and friends about it, and it was just this magical idea that we didn't even know was legit. I took my last dose of Suboxone. My feet were kicking all the night before, and I couldn't sleep, and your body starts just twitching very strangely out of the blue, so much so where like you could hurt someone if you're walking by them, and they, it's very violent, like twitches and sweating, and the sweat that comes out of you when you're on Suboxone is the most disgusting, foul thing in the world. 24 hours is what I waited. 24 hours, and I had weaned down to 0.5 milligrams of Suboxone every other day for about 2 months at this point. Every day was like a living hell. And I put myself in that position. So this is how I took myself out. I took the Iboga, and I prayed as I took it that I would be given wisdom in order to better my life for the betterment of my future family. I had just gotten married, so grateful. Now I had this last piece of the puzzle that I had to put in place. It was such a motivation. I wanted to have children, and I wanted to be a good dad. And I did not want to be emotionally disconnected the way my father was. And I didn't want to be beholden to something that constipates you, irritates you, takes decades off your life. Your priority and focus is never on anything in front of you, but always the next feeling, getting to the next stop, the next pill, the next shot, whatever. So my father had died in 2013. He was long gone at this point. I didn't have anyone or anything. And then I was given my beautiful wife and an opportunity to become a father. So that was the overriding motivation to wean down that far. Because it is hard. When people hear you do it, they think they can do it as well. And you might be able to. Many people struggle with that last part, with the weaning down to that low. Very hard to work in those conditions. I was taking very small amounts of psychedelics and things like that just to be able to interact with people at my job because of how insane that drug makes you feel, especially on a very low dose. It's a very weird situation. From 0.5 to 1.5 milligrams, it's a very weird place to be. So anyways, I got down that low. I took the Iboga. It's just a ground up bark that they put in a capsule. I was just taking it. It tastes like sand and trees and, dirt, but then it has like a numbing effect a little bit. Very powerful. It's very potent tasting. And all of a sudden, everything had like an electric ring to it. But more than that, it had like a beehive ring to it. Like zzz, everything. Like if water was running, zzz, it had that filter over it. Everything had a beehive filter over it. Heard like actual bees, what I thought were actual bees, getting louder and louder, making their way towards me, and then just like hit me in the head, and I was filled with what felt like a beehive. You could feel the physical sensation, like someone putting their finger on the top of your head, moving their finger around through your hair, but all inside my body. And like there were billions of nanobot type, but natural scrubbers, like the best workers you could ever hire and the biggest amount, all going to work at once. Like in Crash Bandicoot, when you get the 3 masks, for each mask you get, you hear booga booga, It's funny too because they say Boga Boga. It sounds like Iboga. And then the third one you get, if you get 3, you can go through anything. All enemies, artillery, weaponry, nothing works on you, and you're lit up and vibrating and all electric looking, and you can just go through the whole level of the game and just destroy everything and win. And anything that touches you that would normally kill you doesn't. That's exactly what it was like. That's what it felt like. That they all had the masks on in my brain, the 3 masks, and they were just, nothing could touch them. As this is happening, it feels like the creator takes your head and starts flipping through your brain like it's a book. So all your memories, like a near-death experience, things like that, people describe life reviews. So that's absolutely what happened to me. And I was still in the same room, and I started having all of these light speed memories from childhood up till now. And not just memories, but connecting the dots from one memory to another and showing me things. Snowballs effects that happened in my life, something I took the wrong way. Years later, then this other thing happened, and how those 2 things are connected. You get to be shown basically the blueprint of your life up till that point. So I was blown away. And that scares a lot of people. They don't want to get caught in the depression of that or in the trauma of certain memories. I experienced a very benevolent, caring, instructive experience. Even if I was shown a traumatic memory, it was light. The heaviness is gone out of it. And you have a very big heart for everyone. You get put in other people's shoes and you get shown things from different perspectives. And it is the most loving experience I've ever seen. And some people call it tough love, or they call it the masculine to ayahuasca. I would agree with that, just in the sense that it loves you so much, it puts everything right in front of your face that you need to fix in the most loving way. But it does it also in other ways, not just going through your memories. All of a sudden, I left the room. But right before I left the room, I was having a lot of memories about childhood and things like that. I just wanted to get better. I had treated my body horribly. I had been a horrible friend to a lot of people because of how caught up in my own was. And so I wanted to do better. And so I prayed in that moment that I would become the man I need to become and accomplish the things I was built to accomplish and make my father proud. And you're seeing everything, all these memories in your head, but you're still in the room. But like your third eye is almost like a projector, and you got this other field of vision going on at the same time. All of a sudden, like a blue see-through hand came down, and there was a sword in it. And I had a discussion. I couldn't see above like the elbow, but I had a discussion with this hand, basically saying, are you ready to get to work? And if you're ready, everything you thought you wanted, you need to take another look at. And as this is being said, everything is flashing before you. All of the vain or materialistic or egoic desires that you had up until that point, whether it is, a programmed idea that you want to be a movie star, a programmed idea that you want to be a rock star, that, whatever your thing is what it brings to the surface. If it's a noble thing, I don't believe it comes to the surface. But all the vain things come up, and this is all emotional. You're feeling every aspect of everything at light speed. He's like, all right, if you're ready to work for me, all these things that were particular to me in a split second flashing before me and all the emotions attached to it over decades, all of that has to go. And you have to be willing to watch it burn in front of you and know that I have greater things planned for you. That's a leap of faith, to turn your back on basically your identity at that point. Most of us find our identities in these things, or these things we long for that we hope we get to one day. So I said, yeah. I said, okay, all right. And so as soon as I said, yeah, okay, I found myself on a horse. And I'm still in the room at this time, but the third eye projection, I'm now on a horse, and I take the sword from the hand I was talking to, and I'm looking at this trail up to like a mountain, like a cliff. And there's a cliff on the other side of it, and there's a drop, like an abyss in between. And I was told that I have to cut the head off the dragon, basically kill this dragon that was supposed to be at the top of this mountain. And it's all emotional, a million miles an hour. Like in my head, every thought is just present and accessible for you and the person you're talking to, the creator. And so the immediate thought is, what if I die? And the creator's like, yeah, what if you die? Yep. So you still gonna do it? It's like, and everything that you wanted, vein and everything, is burning all around you. It's very interesting. Basically, something like, are you willing to die? All of a sudden, I started galloping on this horse up the mountain, and I had the sword in my hand. And I've never been on a horse before in my life, but I'm galloping up this mountain on a horse, just crying my eyes out, thinking about my entire life in a split second, over and over and over, and what I wanted out of life, and what everything, all the unresolved issues, all the people I didn't get to say goodbye to are all in your head. So you can't help but, cry your eyes out up this mountain. As I started to get towards the top, I had this thought, I'm about to die. If I'm about to die, then let's cut a head off a dragon right before we do it. Like, if I'm about to die, who cares? Like, no, there's nothing to be afraid of. And in that moment, I got to the very top of the mountain, and I stood on top of the horse, and I leaped off the horse, and all of a sudden, I got to see it from my eyes and from my perspective, and at the same exact time, I got to see it from another perspective that was like a camera that panned back really fast right when I jumped off the horse, and I saw like an out-of-body experience me, and I saw it from my own perspective at the same time. Chop this head off this dragon. The dragon came out from the abyss, and when I chopped the head off, the body fell back down, and I leaped off the horse. I don't know what happened to the horse, and I wasn't gonna make it to the other side of the cliff. Like, yeah, I killed the dragon, but at the expense of me, right? And it was the most epic feeling in the world. And as soon as I chopped his head, I was just so blown away, and I felt so relieved and so good. And at that moment, I was caught by that hand. And that hand now was massive. It was a regular hand when it first came down, but when it caught me, it was massive. And this celebration just kicked in. And then, in reality, I started to cry. Like, in the room, I was just crying my eyes out, because in that moment, I knew how loved I am. I knew how loved I was. I knew that my story had a purpose, and that I had a purpose and a role to play and things to fulfill. At that point, I didn't know what the specifics of all that are, but I knew it was there. So I come back into the room where I first took the Iboga, and this was maybe the second day. Like I said, long-acting opioids are much harder to scrub. So instead of 48 hours, I was like, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to take 2 weeks off of work, and I'm going to dedicate the first 10 days to the Iboga session. Now, most people experienced with Iboga know how insane that is, because it's so extensive. And I don't suggest any of this, but especially no one do it for 10 days. It is a very exhausting experience, and it can feel like years. Like, one day can feel like years. So 10 days can feel like many years. But again, long-acting opioid, I knew it was much harder to scrub. So I was like, dude, I'm not going back to it. I'm not going back to Suboxone or any of the other prescriptions. So I'm just gonna take as much as I can for as long as I can. That's kind of what I did. It destroys your appetite. So I wasn't eating for 10 days. I was sleep deprived because it's a psychedelic stimulant. I can't stand that term, but it's true. It does stimulate you. But there's a lot of sleep deprivation and a lot of fasting going on for 10 days. Already in horrible shape. Body was ravaged from the pharmaceuticals. I had arthritis. I had arthritic scar tissue all through my arms from shooting up. The worst back and neck issues. My wife would work on me and try to massage me for like hours every single night, and it would just go right back as soon as, like, I would feel good for about 15 minutes and it would go right back. And I was buying all these expensive creams, and my body was absolutely falling apart. In the mornings, I couldn't open my hands for a couple hours, like every day. And some people will be like, I take Suboxone, that doesn't happen to me. I was on it for a very long time. So if you're on it for extended years, things like that can happen. I came back into the room, and like I said, that was the second day, I believe. Then something happened, either that night or the very next night. It's hard to tell, because as these memories and life reviews are going on, your brain is constantly moving 1,000,000 miles an hour in kind of an uncontrollable way. So you're on like a roller coaster, basically. But all of a sudden, I was in the room feeling like that, a million miles an hour. All of a sudden, I was in a different room. Not like that, but more like that. Everything like pixels, like a rock hammer, like cracked a window and it slowly cracked and then just all fell into pieces. That's what happened to my reality. The exact time that that happened, all of the high-speed Lifereview memory flipping turned off. And my normal brain was in my regular state of mind all of a sudden. But I was in a different place. Where was I? So when the pixels fell down, and this happened when I was sitting on my couch in my living room in New York at home with all the lights on. And when the pixels fell, the glass fell, there's like a new reality behind it. And I was walking all of a sudden on a boardwalk. And I was on my way to about 4 dudes, about 4 people. And they were all wearing long coats and hats, very early 1900s. And I was just walking their direction when the reality changed. And so, and then I started looking to the sides of me and I started noticing I was in a very different place than I just was. So I came up to these dudes, and as soon as I saw this new reality, I could see that those guys saw me like come into the reality, because they kind of got jarred. They kind of got a little shocked, except for one guy in the middle. Now, the guys that kind of got shocked, the guy in the middle had to calm them down, and he said, "It's him. Yes, it's him. It's him." And he was telling that to the guys because they were like, "Is that him?" I don't know what that's about. But that's the first things I heard them say. And the guy in the middle never broke eye contact other than like quickly calming his guys down, and started to smile the closer I got towards him. I got towards him and he just put his arm around my neck and he immediately said, "Son, you were born in the slit of a lid in an inkling of time." I was like, okay. They introduced me to the other guys, and the other guys, "It was good to see you again," or something. Like, were relieved that I was who I was. Kind of like an Alice in Wonderland thing. Are you the real Alice? And I was relieved that they were relieved. They told me a bunch of stuff, but they told me that we were gonna work together. And I was like, oh, cool. Like, okay. I immediately knew from the way they were dressed and talking and acting and everything that I was in a very different place. So the first thing I did was, as I started walking off the boardwalk with them, I reached into my wallet and I pulled it out and I opened it, and all of my bills, the money I had, said 1904 on it. All of them. Freshly made bills. So I started working with these guys, and I had incredible experiences. Different jobs in different cities in different decades. I got to experience helping this man with his life in many different areas of his life. In the 1930s, it was a sad story. A gentleman destroyed his life with pharmaceuticals, like addicted to laudanum. Years before, he destroyed his stomach. All these crazy details with the old details and everything. Full-blown scripted storylines that I got placed in and were supposed to follow and interact with certain people. Each decade I went to was a different substance theme. The 50s and 60s, I had a different family. I got a great job as a pilot, and I was flying just cargo and mail back and forth from coast to coast. Again, your brain is regular when you go into these other places, but there's elements of cinematography. There's no other way to talk about it. When these things start, when these visions start, or these other places start, many people, including myself, you hear ticker tape, like an old film reel, start. And then the film actually comes in front of your head, and then you go into one of the frames and you immerse yourself, and then you get to interact and live in that film reel. Like, it's very mind-blowing. And other people will say they're brought into a movie theater type thing, shown things of their life, and that's how they immerse themselves and they go into the movie, basically. Other people will say that they end up in a place with buttons and levers and people that are peering holes like portals into our reality from their reality, and they're rewinding people and editing things and removing things and cleaning things up. Basically, like directors putting edits in, changing the direction of the script, or we changed it, and they're changing it back. Like, very interesting stories that go back way before any modern television show could give you this idea. These stories have existed for very long. That's why they say they're in the Akash, the fabric of reality. After my experience, I saw so many of these screens used and the concept of them. I absolutely believe that all these screens and everything that we're using right now, it has been around since the beginning of time and is just introduced into this part of the reality as needed. I think that's why we're so captivated by movies. I think that's why we're so captivated by everything to do with making movies and things like that, because there's an element of familiarity to it. And so I got to see behind the scenes things, and I'll never forget when my experiences first started after I was in 1904 or around there. The next time I jumped to, in between the time jumping, you'll go to like a buffer period. One of my buffer periods, I was just watching the world go through the ebbs and flows of construction and deconstruction and war and peace, and seeing buildings get built at high speed and then watching them fall down or watching them get altered, and you get to see the entire like construction of a country within a couple seconds. Very interesting. And then all of a sudden you're in a new place and your brain is completely regular speed again. And it's very different for everyone, but I kept getting shown examples of people destroying their life with substances, and it became very clear. That's what it was trying to show me, in the intricate details of each substance and their side effects and how they don't affect everyone. It's just very case-by-case basis, and it all stems from emotional damage and things like that. One of the things was alcohol. That was one of the lessons. We went through many of the substances through different decades, and I was like in the 60s, 70s with the alcohol one. It was only talking to women, and these women at work would drink and stuff, and I would like interview them basically. There was no filter and no reservations. Everyone was just very, this is what it is. This is what I did. This is what I'm dealing with. Very to the point. And the entire experience was extremely instructional. I got to be an assistant in the future, like in the 2030s or whenever it was, to these people that were designing a new phone that had integrative system where it was like virtual reality in the phone, like what they're doing now, but it was on a much more epic scale. And I got to watch certain people like really fail really badly at projects they were working on in life, and people build things back to what they wanted it to be. I had positive and negative experiences, all that taught me massive, profound moral life lessons and got me in the shoes, sit in the seat of many other people and perspectives, and just allowed me to see how case-by-case basis everything is and how to go about your life. And when I say your, I mean mine. It's personal to everyone, but I got shown so many things through other metaphors and people that were telling me about myself. It can also give you blueprints on how to move forward in your life. Like I said, there were future time jump experiences, mind-blowing. So when I came out of this, I had to be calmed down. I couldn't believe so many decades had gone by since I took the Iboga, is what it felt like, that I had to be calmed down. I didn't even remember taking the Iboga, and that can really mess with a lot of people if you think you've just built a business in this entire other reality, and it felt like years, and you've made all these relationships and learned so much and put it all into practice in that reality, and then you come back into this reality and it's all gone. People can get devastated and depressed. I felt an inkling of how and why that could be the case, but it was stressed to me. All those experiences, during the experiences, it was stressed to me that these are all lessons that will be for use in a later time. So that always gave me hope. And at that point, I just time traveled. So like anything is possible now. Because when I say time travel, I don't say Iboga dreams anymore, because they don't feel like dreams. They're absolutely as real as anything you've experienced in this life or more. The fact that I got to experience that, I'm very grateful. I'm very blessed. What I did was I took a lot of the lessons I learned and I put them into practice here. Also, I could think straight again too. When I came out of it, you have to get your bearings because your body has been submerged in numbing itself for 10 years plus. And that's how a lot of people relapse after Ibogaine. They don't realize your body just has to get used to adjusting to regular life again without these. Yes, we're talking about using one drug to combat another drug. Spiritus contra spiritum. One spirit over another spirit. Higher spirit beats out a lower spirit, for sure. And that's what Iboga is. It finally, for me, allowed me to see things from my actual mind, my actual perspective, uninfluenced by other chemicals, you know. Well, but you were influenced by the Ibogaine. I think the Ibogaine is mainly a detoxer. It's such a thorough detoxer that, yeah, you get to experience a bunch of stuff. But that's what it is. And I do believe if you have the right intentions, you can become the best version of yourself with these things. The only government documents that are out say the CIA knows that it modifies men's behavior. So that's about it. That's about as much as they'll tell you. The molecule is almost 3D and hides itself under a microscope. It is the most profound thing in this world. So there is something new under the sun. I mean, yeah, only because they've been trying to hide it, but no, it's been here since day one. Baghaga means to care for, and it has absolutely changed my life. I was cut off from source, but I always had faith. I didn't know how cut off I was, though, until after my experience, when I was able to go about real life, and oh my gosh, I'm like, oh wow, I'm back in the driver's seat again. I don't have fear, all these irrational habits and fears and addictions and just, oh, you should go have a cigarette, you should go have some coffee, you should have, like, none of that was there. It was just quiet. You know, mind blowing. It's like, oh my gosh, I have willpower. Willpower is lost on people on drugs and things like that. They'll explain to you what willpower is, right? But their emotional connection to what that is and their ability to use it, you know, they'll say, no, I do have free will. I chose to take this drug every day, right? If it's helping you, great. But if you're choosing to do something that's clearly destroying you in one way or another, but it's your choice, you know, you might want to look at, there might be, you know, a brain parasite, you know, up. And so I think that's kind of what Iboga does, is cleans out all the spiritual parasites and physical parasites. It did for me. I had choice again. So I went back to my Suboxone doctor and I told him everything that happened. He said, 1, impossible. Why? Because he had never heard of it. And if he hadn't heard of it, there's no way that it exists. He said it didn't even exist. So I said, well, I just did it and look at me. And he wanted to write me more prescriptions. I said, no. What I'm explaining to you is real. And I don't need the 8 drug prescriptions you're about to write me. And I brought my wife in because I had sensed, you know, like I said earlier, he did not want me to wean down. So massive red flag right off the jump. So I wanted my wife to come in with me in this last doctor's appointment, just in case. And I'm glad I did, because when I was like, no, really, I just came here to thank you and say, have hope. You know, I still was projecting that, oh, this guy actually wants to help people and help people get off these addictive drugs and things like that. So I was like, well, I came into this last office visit to tell you about this so you would know that there are other solutions out there that aren't in your books. And he never looked at me ever again. And he just looked at my wife and said, I'm sorry, I did the best I could. And just walked out of the room. And Najla was laughing and she's like, what the f*** you talking? Like, these people are crazy. But yeah, a little bit sometimes. So we laughed, never went back. That experience was over 5 years ago now. And after that, I created my own business, our family business, with my wife. We're like, oh, you come up with a word and I'll come up with a word. That'll be it. So she's like, okay, it's gotta be grounded. And I was like, okay, well, I make extracts, so I would like, you know, grounded extracts, and they're both 8 letters. We're like, wow, it's perfect. It's perfect. It just all came together. All of a sudden knew exactly what I wanted my stuff to look like. And why did I make my own business? I really wanted to create, and I was completely cut off. Writer's block, whatever you want to call it. I was completely cut off to my creation abilities when I was using these prescriptions especially, but all drugs. And they all came flooding back immediately. One of the things Iboga taught me was natural, like whole form natural, as close as you can get to it, right? And if you're gonna make an extract or break something down, do it in the most simplistic way where you're not altering the structure itself, either concentrating the original thing or getting it into a more accessible, certain mushrooms, the cell walls can't be cracked unless you're making the extract or cooking it or things like that. All understandable. Many of these pharmaceuticals, things like that, are completely altered to be patented, chemical, not in symbiosis with your body. So they can work with your body, but it's kind of like jamming what do they call it? The fake Legos into like the real Legos. Like they don't really fit. Or like a puzzle piece that doesn't, but you could make it fit, but eventually, dude, they're not, it's not gonna turn out well, it's not gonna hold up. It's gonna produce a bunch of weird symptoms that you weren't expecting. I got really into natural stuff, and I had a bunch of Iboga time travel experiences that showed me that was the move, right? Because you still need nutrients, you still need vitamins, you still need what the earth provides to be healthy, just like the plants. They need their nutrients, you gotta have healthy soil. So I was looking for healthy soil. And I went into my local co-op. This was such a good co-op. They had so many tinctures, just a massive place. They had homemade stuff. They had such great stuff. But what I noticed, tons of studies where what are on the shelves are not what they're marketed to be. A good example I like to use is I was buying turmeric extract, capsule form, for a very long time. And then one day I noticed I'm not getting what I used to get out of this. Maybe I should stop taking it. I turned it around, I looked at it, and it used to say 1,500 milligram extract on the front, and it still does say that on the front. But on the back now, it said 100 milligrams extract and 1,400 milligrams regular turmeric. Okay, so I was like, man, just wasting money too. So I was like, if I buy it in bulk and I buy a good quality, I started buying from all different places and comparing them. I found the places that I liked the most, and I got to make them myself. At this point, I was very poor financially. I couldn't even keep up with buying the bottles on the shelf, even if they weren't that great, So I was like, okay, I got to do everything in bulk because I want to be taking nutritious, healthy herbs and roots and barks, berries I can, as much as I can, and for my family as well. I had a baby, and my wife was pregnant with our second son. My wife and first son got very sick with a cold while she was pregnant, so I was like, oh man, I gotta get good stuff into them. So I started making my own elderberry syrup because I couldn't afford a small batch of someone else's, but I could spend the same amount of money and buy a pound of elderberry and some honey and make it myself. I did that, and I started realizing I can do that for all of this stuff. So I started buying in bulk from really good places. Okay, my prices can't be as low as co-op places because I'll put myself out of business immediately. And I'm like, how do these other places do it? Oh, well, they're putting, cut in and bullshit. So that's how they do it. So I was like, okay, well, I was a bad salesman early on in my 20s because I can't sell things I don't believe in, aren't of quality. And if they're not of quality, I can sell it, but I'll say it's not the highest quality. Like, if I'm gonna put my own name on it, me, my wife, and our family's name on it, we're not gonna do that. We wanna help people, or what's the point of any of this, right? I went to the co-op. For a while I was buying random things. I didn't even know what they were. Now I would go home and research them, and they happen to be exactly what someone or me or someone in my family needed at the moment. One of those things was red clover for my mother-in-law. So I'm like, wow, man, I just started learning so much about nature. Right after the Iboga session, I just kept getting these instructions that I wasn't tapped into for a decade plus, that I completely forgot about. The source, the voice telling me, stock up, get as many herbs as you can. And I did, and I just kept doing it. I just started spending all my money on it, blah, blah, blah. We didn't have the name at this point of the business or anything. The stocking up was just for my own family. Najla and her mom were the ones that pushed me to do this for other people, make a business out of it, do it. And I was like, okay, but if we do, we don't need to label it, right? Because it's not about the marketing, it's about the product. Najla was like, no, dude, people need to read it and see what it is. Like, you can't just be giving unlabeled bottles to people. Like, that's true. So I was like, well, what would I want it to look like if I was going to go in a store? Well, everything in glass as much as possible. Just in my head, I knew exactly what it was going to look like. I thought that would be cool. All right, this is what it was going to look like. These things just came into my head. These simple black and white logos and everything were just there, right? So then I spent weeks putting all of my ideas into this, and I just had a very simple, very old program where basically the paint application, basically similar to that, not that application, but very similar to that. And I would literally make all of the lines on the bottles. I make everything myself, so a lot of my boxes are powdery and things like that. Stinging nettle. These are some of our liquid extracts. This is how I originally wanted to give them out, just unlabeled. Pretty sweet. This is chaga. Tastes like chocolate. The king of mushrooms. Reishi would be the queen. They say that because reishi is great for females, great for males as well, but some people say that it can lower your testosterone and maybe increase estrogen just in a similar way that soy does, but it has many other effects. A lot of anecdotal cancer evidence and things like that. But this is more about abundance and just thriving and being healthy. Very cool. So once you realize that all these things are just sitting there and so much of the world don't care about it because, you know, it's all hippy-dippy hoodoo bullshit. As we're like healing and thriving, it's all good. It's so cool because you don't even have to hide it or worry about people discovering it, because so many people just believe it's nonsense, that everything outside is literally just to chop, mow, prune, and throw out. But then they'll talk about pH levels and things like that. Oh man. So they believe some of it, but not all of it. But regardless, that's what I started making. People that are looking for it, if it's meant to find you, it absolutely will. It found me. It was calling me through many different people and things my whole life. And it got to me. And when I implemented it, my life went from extreme struggle to extreme purpose and knowing my purpose. The only reason I've ever even shared my story is so other people can tap into that and experience their purpose. So beautiful and encouraging and inspiring and fulfilling to hear, dude, I feel like $1 million today. You know, and why? Because they took the right amount of black squidding, bladderwrack, Irish sea moss, all at the right time, at the right dose that we had discussed weeks prior. And this was supposed to be the plan, and hopefully it works out that way, it pans out, and it does, and it exceeds their expectations. And that has been happening for the last couple of years since we started Grounded Extracts. And that I'm so grateful for. That's what we're here to do, help each other. I do believe that. To stand up and tell everyone, like, I used to be a drug addict. Be true to your part in it, good and bad. Be real about what happened. And try to help people help themselves. So many people I hear talk about, hey, I don't know if they're gonna wake up. How do we wake these people up? I don't think we do wake these people up. I think people wake up themselves. And if you play a role in it, that's great. Know that there's hope out there. Know that there's great things out there. And there's fun to be had too. Build and create. And it just takes time and perseverance and patience and a clear mind. You can accomplish anything. It's pretty cool. We're all told that when we're young, right? We're all told you can be anything you want. You can accomplish anything. And then as soon as, 15 years go by and it's like, hold on to that dream. You're told pretty quick, don't quit your day job. Make sure you get a day job, first of all, and get in line and stop trying to make all of us look bad by trying to be someone. It's just fascinating. You set out to accomplish this thing, do it. Just do it. Life can be beautiful, even in the midst of absolute horror when you look back, because you see everything it taught you and what it led to. And the entire story consists of good and bad. And what we learned, continue to learn, going in and out of those things. Very cool. I'm very grateful. Thank you so much. I hope you enjoyed this episode. We're gonna dive deeper into details of some Iboga sessions and some future stories. And next week, we will be interviewing someone who did an Iboga session, what the session was like, and then what their life is like after the session. You think you've heard it all, and then help people. They give you their own whole world that they have details to that changed their lives. So anyways, that'll be great. That'll be excellent. So we're going to get deeper into the sessions, the experiences, and we have a ton of topics we're going to get into. It's going to be a good time. All right, y'all. Happy holidays. Thank you so much. And I hope y'all have a great week. And we'll see you next week on the Vulgate. Peace.